This is a City AM Studios production.
Hello and welcome back to Business as Usual, brought to you by Okta, with me, Martin Kimber.
And me, Simon Hunt. Coming up on today's show, M&S locks horns with Downing Street over price control threats.
The UK attracts less foreign direct investment than last year. EY's UK chief economist tells City AM why.
Plus, Arsenal win the league. Get in. Our deputy sports editor will pull back the curtain on the club's billionaire owner.
Welcome back to Business as Usual, the podcast for the city's content connoisseurs.
We're joined now in the studio by senior city reporter Sam Norman, fresh from being named, Sam, by MHP as one of 30 journalists under 30 to watch. Well done.
Well done.
Thank you very
We only
much.
hope this award doesn't make you like one of those people who appear on Forbes 30 under 30 who later end up in jail.
Thank you very much,
No
Simon.
guarantees.
No guarantees.
So Sam, first of all, the boss of M&S has issued some choice words about the government's threat to impose price caps on supermarkets.
Yeah, I mean, it's the headline coming out of the results this morning, and obviously these results were quite watched to for any recovery from the cyber attack. And the kind of narrative's quickly shifted now because we got that report last night around this potential voluntary price cap on supermarket goods. I mean, he's come out and said it would be completely preposterous. I think we've seen the Treasury quickly row back over the last 24 hours. There's been a bit of a bait and switch, a bit of a, just a really drawing back quite quickly, refusing to commit to any sort of like real enforcement action on them, which naturally you obviously would. And as the boss has come out equally and just said how ridiculous of a policy it kind of would be.
They did the same kite flying with rental caps as well. Do you remember that? That was floated for about a day, then Rachel Reeves kind of backtracked massively. I will say, of all the supermarkets to impose sort of caps on food prices, I'd like it to be M&S actually. That would
be handy.
That would be quite handy. Why don't they work in principle?
It's just not something you can do in like a free market. I mean, that's literally the way our economy is set up. And I mean, you're right with the kite flying. I think it's what we've become used to with this Treasury. I mean, you look back to the budget and we were covering it every week. We saw a different policy kind of got trailed. There'd be a lot of backlash and now they'd go back. But interestingly, what you say with the food arm, that was actually one of the strongest performances in today's results. Sales were up 25% and that was actually driven by a strong performance in the food arm. I mean, we all love M&S Food Hall, so...
But I mean, he is right to say it's preposterous, isn't he? I mean, when someone says that the supermarkets are fleecing consumers, that to me is the surest indication that the person saying it is economically illiterate.
Yeah, I mean...
What are the profit margins on supermarkets generally, percentage-wise?
I mean, tiny. It's
2%?
like 1 or 2%. Yeah, it's virtually nothing.
You can see just how quickly the supermarkets have all quickly pushed back at it. It was preposterous to kind of come out with. I mean, the amount of backlash the S&P got, I don't know why they'd want to trail it so quickly after that. But yeah, it's no surprise they're going to come out swinging. And like you said, it's just not something you can. I think you can bring in an economy like ours.
Absolutely. So moving on to banking. Earlier this week we had results from digital bank Monzo, and today it's the turn of London rival Starling. So what should we be looking out for, Sam?
Absolutely. So Starling will round off our trio of fintech darlings from who entered the scene in the last decade. So that's obviously Revolut, Monzo, and Starling. What I'm going to be interested to see today in Starling's results is how Engine performs. So as we know, so Starling's got its core retail bank, but it's also got Engine, a winner of the City AM Awards, I must add.
This is a sort of tech arm of the business.
So
right?
Engine is basically how Starling sells its software to other banks so they can use for their own, I guess, infrastructure. Now, last year, revenue at Engine was up 284%. So it was modest. It was, I think, 8.7 million to the overall group revenue. That's a modest contribution, but the rate it's growing at is a real indicator of, like, can this become the new, like, heavyweight division of the group?
From a retail banking point of view, are Starling being sort of left behind in the Monzo Revolut race a bit?
There's a lot of chatter around that, and I think over the last year we've seen, I mean, look at the way Revolut has gone global. It's a $75 billion juggernaut now. It's doing every sort of way it can to diversify its revenue streams. Monzo's really doubled down on the UK, and it's paid off. The customers grew by a quarter in this week's results we saw. Starling's customer acquisition rate, and that's the kind of key thing you're looking at with these fintechs, are they poaching customers from the high street rivals? It's really kind of stagnated compared to some of these rivals, and now you've got a lot of these other neobanks, so Zopa, all the other just digital banks of the last 5 years who have entered the scene as it's got a lot more saturated and crowded, and obviously the high street banks pulling up their game. Starling has found itself a little bit more in a crowded field, trying to find its unique asset, and Engine could be that.
Well, I look forward to seeing how the sort of Darwinism of markets whittles down those names as we go, I suppose.
Starling, start your engine.
Now, if you're heading off on holiday this summer, there's a decent chance you'll be flying with Easyjet, I know I am, who have their results out today. So what can we expect from them?
Yeah, so Easyjet, we kind of got a little bit of a tease of this not too long ago. They actually came out and issued a profit warning, which was kind of no surprise. I mean, it was a common theme amongst the airlines. We saw the same with Wizz Air, I'm pretty sure. I think we're expecting it to fall somewhere around the 550 million mark for that'll be a pre-tax loss. That'll be down around 40%, I think, from where they landed last year. It's
bumpy landing.
It's a bumpy landing. It's a common theme I think we're seeing across this industry. And it's a tough time to be a travel industry, I think.
Right, now, coming up after the break, the UK sees a downturn in foreign direct investment. We'll hear from EY's chief UK economist right after this break. Don't go anywhere.
This episode is brought to you by Okta. AI agents are everywhere now, quietly making decisions across organisations. That's great until you stop and think, who's in charge?
If you don't know who an agent is, what it's connected to, or what it's allowed to do, you can't really trust it to act in your interests. That's the bit Okta focuses on. They secure the identity of AI agents, so there's one clear layer of control across the whole system.
Which means every agent has a clear identity, permissions, and a line of accountability, even as things scale.
Risk becomes something you manage, not guess at. Secure every agent, secure any agent. Okta secures AI.
Welcome back to Business as Usual.
Now, new data out today shows that the UK is attracting less foreign direct investment than this time last year. However, despite the decline, the UK remains second out of all European countries in attracting the most inward investment from abroad.
CCM's investment reporter Maisie Grice has been speaking to EY's UK chief economist Peter Arnold about the report and asked why the UK is seeing a drop-off.
You've a relatively slow economic growth across Europe and in the UK as well. And actually that geopolitical uncertainty coming from things like trade, coming from some of the conflicts we've seen, that does act as a bit of a headwind. I think alongside that, though, there are some structural challenges that Europe as a whole faces. So why is growth so slow? Well, investors point to things like high levels of regulation, relatively high taxes, and also some of the issues around energy prices that I think are pretty critical in the region as well. So there's a mixture of sort of short-term uncertainty, but some of the longer-term structural factors are important.
Regulations clicked something in my brain there as well, because obviously Germany is trying to pull back all this red tape and sort everything out to do with that. So it makes sense for Germany to also potentially see a decline there for that reason.
Yes, that's right. And I think Germany, as we know, quite heavily weighted to manufacturing, has been very exposed by the energy shocks post the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So I think there's a little bit of structural issues in Germany that are at play as well.
And as well, I know you mentioned 2025 reasons for the downfall, but ultimately it was the third consecutive year of downfalls. And if I'm correct in saying it was, the fifth year out of 8 that also saw a downfall. So what are these long factors? Why are we seeing this? You know, as you were saying, why aren't investors maybe feeling more confident what's going wrong? Where can we sort this?
So I think if you looked at that time series as you flagged, I think what we have seen, I'd go back to the kind of the growth point. If you looked really over the last 10 or 15 years, you've seen much more rapid economic growth in the US, a much more vibrant, much more buoyant economy. You've seen rapidly growing growth in Asia as China, India, and some of those big emerging markets really come onto the global stage. And European growth is average at, say, 1.5%. So it's less exciting, I think, for international investors than other regions. I think we also have to reflect that US investment, it's the most important investment in Europe. US investment into Europe has been declining. There's something around the kind of America first economic policy that both Trump and Biden really adopted. And that means that US investors are increasingly looking domestically rather than to Europe.
Now, as you can tell from Simon Hunt's shirt, if you're watching this, if you're not watching this, he's wearing an Arsenal shirt. After 22 long years, Arsenal have won the Premier League.
Come on, you Gooners!
That's the last time you get to say that. They've finished the season as runners-up 3 years in a row, but now the Gunners will receive the Premier League trophy at Selhurst Park after they play Crystal Palace in their final game. But what lies behind the success of the new champions? Deputy Sports Editor Matt Hardy's here to tell us more about the owners.
Hi guys, how are you doing? Congratulations, Simon.
How am I doing? I'm on top of the world. That's how I'm doing.
Well, look, Stan Kroenke is kind of He's got fingers in all the sporting pies, really. If you don't mind me looking at my book, he owns the NFL team, the LA Rams, which won the Super Bowl 5 years ago. Arsenal, who won the Premier League last night after Man City failed to win and take it to a final day. They could go on to win the Champions League in a couple of years. And he's also got successful teams in the NBA with the Denver Nuggets, Colorado Avalanche in the NHL, and also a lacrosse team called the Colorado Mammoth. The point is this, it's so hard when you go into sport, you spend a lot of money. We're seeing that at Chelsea, we're seeing that at other clubs, and you tend to not get success very, very soon. Stan's been in the game for 20 years, 25 years in some instances, and he's finally reaping the rewards. He's winning across all franchises. He's winning across so many sports. His net worth's now $23 billion. He owns the SoFi Stadium in LA, which is amazing. It's going to be used for the Olympics. It's going to be used for the Super Bowl coming up. The guy seems to have locked it down. He also owns, you'll like this, Martin, he's just bought 1 million acres of New Mexico land.
Why would I be a particular fan of that?
An entrepreneurial guy doing things.
Yes, we're a fan of that.
And he also he had a falling out with the fans a few years ago when there was all this Super League stuff that came out and there was massive protest outside the ground. That was followed by a period of quite significant investment, which almost felt like a kind of appeasing of that issue. And you've seen now the fruits of that.
Yeah, and we've seen how he's done a board level change very recently. The CEO has gone from there to Spurs, and they're probably, as this is being recorded, could be relegated at the weekend. We don't know just yet. Look, the guy seems to have mastered it, and there's also a really interesting thing at the moment about he's got a really good relationship with Farhad Khan, who owns Fulham and who also owns the Jacksonville Jaguars. And last season, the Jacksonville Jaguars played an NFL game at Wembley. They played the Rams, so they played Kroenke's Rams, and they organised it so that the day before in the Premier League, Fulham played Arsenal. So this is the kind of future of sport where these two guys had both of their Premier League teams and both of their NFL teams playing in the same weekend. And I believe that also constituted, it was Sadiq Khan's birthday, and I think he had an appearance on someone's yacht that weekend.
Well, I don't blame you for having to write down the list of all the stuff he owns, because I wouldn't remember that.
Here's the thing I don't get. Why is it in the Premier League we just have like names of areas, of towns or cities, and yet in the US it's the Nuggets, the Rapids, the Rams? What's all of this going on?
Well, I think the thing that stays the same is the Denver or the Colorado, but obviously the LA Rams have been around the shop. They kind of pick up and move. The Oakland Raiders became the Las Vegas Raiders. You know, things just move. There's less of a connection there. And also, you look at London. It's 9 million people. Is that the going rate now? 7 Premier League clubs. It might be 6. It will be 6 when West Ham or Spurs go down. But we have such a concentration of clubs in this country in all sports. In rugby, we tend to have Tigers, Sharks. In cricket, you have similar.
The Hawks.
The 100, London Spirit.
I
think in cricket this year you're going to have the Mumbai Indians, London, because they're owned by
But
the
for
Ambans.
Arsenal, we have the champions. So.
The champions, and obviously your tube station's Arsenal, but you guys are not from North London. You are South London.
No, that's true.
So North London forever, except from when it started, right?
just briefly, what does the win mean for Arsenal? Does this unlock a lot more money for them? Does this mean their merch is going to sell for more? Like, is this like a virtuous cycle?
Well, I think the thing when you talk about valuations, the Dallas Cowboys are widely seen as the most valuable team in the world, NFL team. They're going around, it's about 13 billion. If you're looking at Premier League teams, you're probably going to look at Man United as the most expensive because of the heritage. You're looking at 6-7 billion because of the relegation thing. So Arsenal are going to be valuable. They've got a stadium they're looking to potentially expand. City AM columnist Sam Cunningham said that the other week. They're working with Architects Populous to see how they can make that bigger. And merch, of course, can go up. It's not just the price of a shirt will go up. That might not happen, but now they can have the same amount of merch, double it, and put champions on it, and happy days. And I should say they're in the Champions League final in a couple of weeks. They could make 150 million in prize money if they win that. They're already at 140 million euros. They're absolutely flying.
So, just final question to you, Matt Hardy. Where were you when you found out that Arsenal had won the league?
I was actually with you, Martin Kimber, in the theatre.
Yes.
We were at the Old Vic, weren't we?
One flew over the cuckoo's nest.
One for the good
Thank
nest.
you, Bird and Bird.
Thank you, Bird. It was one of those amazing things where obviously the standing ovation happened. May I say, my first bit of theatre in my adult London life. I'm 26 and that's still not really
utterly
happened.
Bizarre.
I went to the iteration of Who Wants to Be Millionaire live.
And you've seen Panto.
I've seen a bit of Panto. Never been to a musical, which might surprise some people watching, but not really my thing. But look, it was really good production, and everyone obviously turns on their phones afterwards, and there just started to be some kind of rings of Arsenal.
Yeah.
I had to explain to a lovely old lady that Arsenal had won the league, and it wasn't a Woolwich takeover of the old Vic. They weren't moving from the Emirates.
It was a really good endorsement of good public behaviour. Yeah. Actually, that everyone had their phone off during the performance, and genuinely you only heard sort of celebrations. It was so funny. Everyone was like clapping for the amazing actors and for the fantastic production for about 2 seconds, and then everyone sort of started erupting for
I
Arsenal.
think what actually happened was they were clapping that I made it through the 2.5 hours. I was very impressed, but by the end I did think kind of, could we have a second interval? I could do it, my attention span. I'm on the sports desk, guys. The attention span's not too
Well, on that note, thank you very much for coming in, Matt, to talk about Arsenal, by far the greatest team the world has ever seen.
Now, the Veuve Clicquot Bold Woman Awards 2026 have been announced, celebrating the very best female entrepreneurs. City AM's social media producer Catherine Van caught up with Alicia Fredrickson, the CEO and co-founder of Seabound, a little earlier. She's won the Bold Woman Future Award and asked how she's used being a woman to her advantage in a sector mostly dominated by men.
I think getting comfortable with the fact that I already will stick out, and so just kind of leaning into that. So whenever I go to conferences, I'm usually very active, meeting as many people as I can. I'm always a person asking questions. I usually have a speaking slot as well. I mean, I think a very literal example is when I go to a conference, I usually wear something really bright and colorful. I know that I will stick out anyway, so I might as well be especially memorable as a participant there. And then I think that helps me to build more relationships with people and kind of maximize the opportunity in that particular event.
Now it's time for our regular Thursday night drinks weather forecast. As ever, journalist Michael Hunter has made himself available for this segment, and earlier he spoke to Julian Skelly, head of retail at AI firm Publicis Sapient, who've developed a system to help retailers and hospitality better prepare for the UK's volatile weather.
Weather is kind of the ultimate problem for retail. It affects both demand and supply. So what organisers and retailers are looking for is technology that can help them predict what's coming in the door and then predict what the shape of demand will be.
And so does it use more up-to-date information to do that? Is it more sensitive to trends? How does that work on that level, first of all, Julian?
Historically, retailers have looked sort of back to last year. What was the weather like last year? What was the forecast like then? Who came through the door? What did they buy? And today they can be much more specific. So you can look at data signals from not just weather, but like location, inventory, stock levels, what consumers are thinking and how they're behaving. So you can be much more specific and then dynamically alter things like inventory or forecasting.
So if the weather forecast suddenly changes, you make sure you've got the right kit for the weather.
Absolutely,
if you're a
yes.
clothing or an apparel retailer, that kind of thing. What about the accuracy angle? Because we've discussed in some length on City AM how businesses have proved vulnerable to maybe over pessimistic weather forecasts or oversimplified weather forecasts. That wasn't necessarily a thing about accuracy in itself. But do you worry that maybe the model is vulnerable to the likes of the weather forecasters themselves maybe getting it wrong?
I'm not sure they are, because I don't think it really matters. They say saying Saturday is going to be raining. That doesn't really matter in itself. It's what retailers do with the information. So that affects how many people are going to come through the door. It typically drives more demand online. So if the weather's bad enough that they don't get that stock or people coming to help run the store.
Sure.
So it's more how retailers react to the data that they have.
It does feel like the weather is sort of the last frontier of British business to conquer, that and regulation and tax. But it feels like weather is one of those big speed bumps we've yet to properly cross.
Yeah, when the sun is out, growth is out.
And for that reason, your official Thursday night drinks weather forecast is 23 degrees and cloud. So I would say that is solid outdoor weather,
book your seat outside, book your table. It's going to be rammed. Well, that's just about all we have time for today. Thank you very much for listening to Business as Usual, brought to you by Okta.
And don't forget to subscribe to City AM's daily newsletter and, of course, to download our free app.
It even has puzzles now. Simon and I will be back in your podcast feeds tomorrow at 6 a.m. Don't worry, Matt Kenyon will be returning. But for now, goodbye.
Goodbye.